You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we're going to be exploring self-limiting beliefs. And it's very important to explore this because these hold us back. They create problems in our life. They activate the self-sabotage that we can contribute in our own life. And exploring this is very important, but also understanding it, why it's happening, and how do we reprogram these thoughts. And this is a way that we can get back on the proper path, as well as maybe being on a new path that's actually good for us, for our self-growth and our just our personal success. And in joining me on the show, somebody that I admire, somebody that is working in reprogramming self-limiting beliefs, working with clients on dealing with childhood trauma, and being able to reverse a lot of these negative aspects of these beliefs is Leah Fisher. Leah is not only a great friend of mine, she's also a professional artist, and she's also gotten back into therapy, which is so amazing because she got back into it. She's still doing the artwork, honestly, but she's back at her major passion in life. And so I'm so glad to have her live on the show. Leah, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Ashley. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. How are you?
I'm doing great. And I'm so glad that you've decided to get back into therapy. Share a little bit about that because, you do have this amazing, art background as well.
Yeah. So probably about 15 years ago, I had graduated from grad school and to be a therapist. And at the same time, my art career started happening kind of out of left field, and it diverted my attention for a few years, but I never really lost the passion for human behavior and what affects us and how we have the ability to make ourselves heal and live more creative and passionate lives. And so just in the last few months, I've decided to start my practice back up, and it's been amazing. It's been absolutely amazing. I'm thrilled to be doing it and still painting too, of course.
It's amazing. And also Leah is working with me as well. So really happy about that.
Yes. I'm so excited about our partnership. Absolutely.
It's amazing. So this is great. And we were talking the other day on the phone and, kind of discussing, self-limiting beliefs and what have you. And it's like, hey, let's do a show. Let's do a radio show. Let's do a podcast on it because this is something that's really important that I think is not really thought about. I don't think a lot of people think about the impact that these beliefs have on us and the impact it has on our future, but just even that, our day-to-day life.
Absolutely. Everything that we observe in the world and the opinions and the judgments that we have about it are simply our beliefs, what we believe to be true. And for example, some things that some people would think are completely horrible, some other people would think is amazing. Like, let's take divorce, for instance. Some people are thrilled to be getting divorced and some people are shattered. And it's the same event, but it's just the beliefs that you have around the circumstance that really cause suffering or happiness.
That's so true. It's the way we see things. It's the way we see the world. If we see the world as a very happy, peaceful place, we will see things that way. If we see the world as a very scary place and a very fearful place, we'll see the world that way as well. When we look at self-limiting beliefs, they're definitely caused by a lot of aspects. And my first thought is, past experiences or comments made by others. I mean, what are some other, ways or factors of self-limiting beliefs where they originate from?
Yeah, that's a really smart question. Well, so where we first originally get our beliefs, it's actually between the ages of 0 and 7. And the way this works is that when we're young children and we are around our caregivers and around our environment, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that is responsible for our higher thinking abilities and logic, is not really formed at all. So as children, as we are learning, we're these little humans coming into the world, we're absorbing everything around us. We're absorbing our parents, what they say, what they're feeling, what the environment is, what the overall tone of the environment is. And unfortunately, because the prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, isn't online now, if we experience anything that's perceived as negative, a negative emotion such as fear or shame or uncertainty or anger, because we're children, we take everything so personally. We don't have the ability to say, okay, maybe my parents have a stressful job, or they don't have all the time in the world to attend to every emotional need I have. And we will form self-limiting beliefs because of a negative emotion that we experience. For example, say, just take that example, your dad having to work a lot because he's a high powered attorney and he works 80 hours a week. Well, your dad's not there, you're missing him, and you're feeling sadness. A little child can easily interpret that as, I don't matter. If he loved me, he would be here. Therefore, my needs don't matter and I'm unlovable. And that thought can go with you into adulthood. Right? Does that make sense?
Very powerful for sure, because we're not able to really
Yeah.
process that at that time. Because we're not able to say,
Yeah.
oh, dad was, had this job. And it's interesting when you work with clients, who are in their 30s or 40s, and it's like, well, how do you feel about this? Oh, my dad was a good person. He tried, he was doing this or doing that, but we can't process at that level at that age.
Not at all. And I do have to work with my clients a little bit on that, because many times they had really amazing parents that did everything in the world for them and gave them every benefit, but may not have understood exactly how a child can kind of jump to some conclusions that don't really serve them that well. Like, for instance, another example is parents who are very supportive and will put their kids in all kinds of lessons and say, you're so proud of you and you're so good at this, and you're amazing. One message that a child can get that's very common is that getting love is conditional based on their performance, instead of just who they are, like, as a human. So you'll see a lot of successful people doing amazing things that are rock stars in their own right, but deep down they just don't feel good enough, because it's always about that next, like, dopamine hit of, I've got to accomplish this, I've got to win this, I've got to perform to feel loved.
That's true. And I find it hard because sometimes there's that big disconnect. And Leah, I think you know what I'm saying when, you're in a session with a client who, you're asking about that parent, and, they've already kind of rectified with that, but they haven't rectified it with their inner child. They might have rectified it in their adult brain. But it's like, well, that's not what we're really talking about, because this stuff started at a very young age, and you might have gotten over it or realized now as an adult what was really going on, and then, kind of given the benefit of the doubt and what have you. But that wasn't there back when this self-limiting belief was, like, concreted into your brain or belief system.
Yeah, and that's right. And as adults, we can understand what was going on, but the reasons why clients are coming to therapy is generally because something isn't working, something is triggering them, they're having emotions that they don't quite understand, some anxiety, depression, relationship issues. And what they don't get is that because they have that belief, which self-limiting belief can also be a subconscious belief, right? That I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, I'm not good enough. Even though you understood what happens, the program running in the back of the mind that's automatic in the background is, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy. And so you're feeling sad, you're feeling anxious, things aren't working out. And that's because the subconscious is running the show, not currently what you rationally know is true, right?
Very true. And it really contributes to issues throughout someone's life. And exactly, because it goes from one, it originates from one, and then goes to the other. And it's interesting. I'm sure you see that when somebody comes in and, they're having an issue, with their current relationship, or it's been multiple relationships, kind of a pattern. How do you begin to kind of point that out and go back to, being able to explore, the possible, belief system that originated, or the childhood trauma that contributed to this specific situation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I have a pretty specific formula that I follow, and let's just take that coming in because of relationship issues, and we might say someone might come in and they want to explore their attachment style per se. Say someone has an anxious attachment style and feels very needy and never really feels like they get their needs met in a relationship, and it's never enough, and they always want closeness, yet people seem to pull away. And maybe they've gone through a breakup. They're in a lot of pain, coming to therapy, trying to figure out how to cope with it. Well, we'll start with the triggering event, let them explain what's going on current day. And the next step is going to really, really explore the feelings that are happening, because what is happening and where that original fracture is that when they were children and having the feelings, there was no one there to help them identify and metabolize and understand the feelings. So current day, people are working from this traumatized state, having an emotional response that their 6, 7, 8-year-old would have. It feels very big. It feels very overwhelming, very scary, and they don't know about the emotions and how they work. So we'll talk about what the actual emotions are and where they feel them in the body, and really get them used to saying, okay, I'm having an emotion of shame, of abandonment, of sadness and grief, and really talk to them about what that is. We will then go into what are the thoughts that are associated with the feelings when they're deep down in them. So say someone's recovering from a breakup and they're feeling so hopeless, so sad, really anxious. They might derive, I'm unlovable, I'm going to be alone forever, nobody wants me, nobody loves me. And then I'll talk to them about the actions that they take when they're in these emotions. So as children, we get in the habit of not feeling our emotions because the adults really don't understand it around us. And we pick up things like self-soothing behaviors, drugs, alcohol, shopping, sex, getting busy, being perfect, producing, all kinds of things that we do to not feel our feelings. Once we have the feeling, what the action is that we do that keeps us from feeling the feeling, and what the self-limiting beliefs are, we go back, we regress into the timeline of the inner child. And I go back with the client and we talk to the child about what these emotions are, what they felt at the time, what the situation was, teach them that an emotion is normal, what it is, that it doesn't last forever, that it's safe, that it only lasts for about 3 to 7 minutes. Hopefully we can talk to them and actually get them to feel the emotion and let it metabolize out of the body, and then reassure them that this is an ongoing relationship and that anytime that they have an emotion, we're going to sit with them and talk to them and love them and give them unconditional love and attention so that they are safe to have that emotion. And what that does is that when the inner child is able to release that, the person current day therapy is as well, and the emotion is unlodged out of their body. And they're more free to feel the emotions of love and peace and joy instead of grief and sadness and fear.
That's very powerful, and we'll be returning back in just a few minutes. And so stay tuned, don't change the channel. And Leah's going to continue to talk about this because this is some powerful work that can really help to, get rid of those types of emotions, those types of feelings, and put us on the right track. So stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time. You know it. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, Leah Fisher's been joining me so we could discuss self-limiting beliefs. And this is so important because, we don't really sometimes realize what those beliefs or those old outdated belief systems and how they are affecting us. You know, Leah, we were talking about your processing, and I want to go deeper in a deep dive in our next segment on that. But I wanted to talk about specifically what are the three top self limiting beliefs that you seem to see probably more often than not?
Mm, yeah. So by far, I think the biggest one that I see, and most everybody that they kind of come across this way is, I'm not good enough. And it's so invasive because I think with when we're trying to please our parents, when we're trying to be in with a partner, be good enough to be with a partner, trying to live up to our own expectations, we often really just it's never ever good enough, right? It's always on to the next accomplishment, the next person, the next beauty assessment, or just trying to kind of be the star of the show, but we never really just accept and love ourselves like completely just for being us. And I think that that's a really really deep programming. um
I
the
agree with
second
you though on
one,
that. Real quick before we
yeah.
jump into that, I agree. It's the I'm not good enough is interesting and how that impacts us, whether it's in a relationship, a love relationship, whether that's like applying for a another job or putting or kind of putting ourselves out there. And then you're right, how we see ourselves, are we successful enough? Will people love
Mhm.
us? Will we be able to? And it's and I find that a lot too where that kind of reconnects. I'm not good enough is also like a fear factor, but it also connects with the imposter syndrome too, because I think you have some really really intelligent, major overachieving individuals that question their ability quite a bit based on that,
Mhm.
self limiting belief.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Another one that I see a lot is my needs don't matter. And people, what this looks like when people come into therapy is that they are people pleasers. They are overperforming for other people to gain some love or some approval. They will very very much be depleted, depressed, and and it comes a lot with not being seen as children, and maybe having some parents that had other things going on, that truly the parents needs came before the children. And that can be a lot of different things. I mean, an illness in the family, addiction, mental illness, or even just being really busy, or having 4 or 5 kids, right?
Hmm.
um, Maybe we don't get everything we need, but as children, we're taking it so personally, like, my needs don't matter. I only matter when I'm trying to meet the needs of others. Kind of a cornerstone of some codependent practices, right?
For sure, codependency and the whole basis of value. I'm
Yeah,
not valuable unless I'm doing X, Y, Z for somebody else.
yeah, yeah. So the root fracture there is my needs don't matter. And the third one, that I see a lot is just I'm unlovable. Um, And of course, that comes from the parents too. I mean, maybe the parents are really suffering, and a child is always wanting to connect and always wanting and needing this validation. It's very difficult to give a child everything that they need all the time. And so, if a parent is irritated, or in the worst case scenario, may be abusive, maybe physically or emotionally abusive or neglectful, a child can very easily go to, I'm not getting what I want, they don't love me, and I'm unlovable, which shows up a ton in relationships. And when people are in a romantic relationship and they're looking at someone saying, do you love me? Please love me. What do I have to do to make you love me? Just love me, love me, love me. That's the I'm unlovable.
That's very true, and we're going to talk more about that when we return. So stay tuned. Don't change the channel. We'll be talking about self-limiting beliefs and how we can, make changes to those to be on a better pathway. Live your true life perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. In today's show, we've been talking about self-limiting beliefs, how to be able to figure those out, what those are, the top 3 self-limiting beliefs. But, the biggest part of dealing with self-limiting beliefs is really connecting to your inner child. And Leah, let's talk about that. How do we connect with that? How do we begin to do the real deep inner child work that we need to do to be able to let these feelings and thoughts go from our life?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics. It's so nourishing. It's so yummy. So the first step in working with your inner child is becoming aware of your own emotions. So we're just bumbling along in our lives, just trying to get things done. We're busy, we're productive, and oftentimes, whenever there's this pesky emotion that comes up, we ignore it, we medicate it, we entertain it, but we don't really pay attention that it's a signal that we emotionally need something. And so the first step is to become aware of when you're slightly irritated, when you're sad. Anger usually is so intrusive that you can't ignore it, right? But the
Mhm.
other emotions, guilt and shame, they're almost just like a little pesky pebble in your shoe. You know what I mean?
For sure. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So once you have slowed down, gained some awareness and some consciousness about yourself, saying, okay, today I'm feeling just kind of weird and like my skin's on inside out. Okay, what is that? Maybe it's shame, maybe I'm feeling ashamed of something. Then spending some time with yourself and becoming aware of how you're feeling and laying down, calming yourself, putting one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly, because we have neurons in our heart and our belly, not just in our brain. And we're rewiring these subconscious beliefs, right?
Mhm.
Um, we want to lay down, get very comfortable, get as very relaxed as we can. People can call it a meditative state. Um, what it technically is a alpha theta brainwave state. You get this way when you're in hypnosis or when you like watching TV will get you in this state of brain. And the reason why you want to be in this relaxed state is because your neurons connect and reconnect very easily when your brain is in this state, right? That's why hypnosis can change behaviors and beliefs very, very fast. So you can get yourself in this state with your hand on your heart, hand on your belly, and you breathe. You breathe in, you breathe out, you really sit with yourself, and then you ask your body, okay, I'm having this emotion. I'm feeling some shame and some fear and some grief. And you go back and you say, when was the first time you ever felt this?
Mhm.
You're listening to your body, you're engaged with your brain, you're floating off to that moment. And if you can get back to a time when you felt those emotions, when you're between the ages of 0 and 7, that is the sweet spot to start talking to your inner child.
Very, very
Uh,
interesting and very direct. How hard is it though to get, clients to be able to kind of let down their guard and actually allow them to get back to that timeline?
I find that people are super receptive. They're really receptive. We have a couple of sessions really going over with a fine tooth comb exactly what we're doing. And after I've explained to them that we're really working on changing their neurobiology by pairing a different emotion with a different thought by doing this process, I mean, they're all for it, because they don't want to be triggered, going through life, really experiencing all these painful emotions and not being able to function because of it. So I find that they are very receptive to it.
What about
When
the
you're
client that
already
can't remember? Like, what about the client that, has
Mhm.
a tendency of saying, "Oh, I don't remember much of my childhood." How do you get
Yeah,
them past that, belief as well to get
yeah.
into that deeper dive?
That happens a lot. That happens a lot. Well, we'll go back to the earliest memory that they can think of. And a lot of times they won't go back to their vulnerable inner child. They will go to their angry teenager
Mm,
because they can get in touch with anger. They remember that time that they were 15 and like someone didn't show up for them or really one of their parents really screwed up or, they have a pretty um, good recognition of that. And any part of us in any one of our timelines, when you go back and give them the compassion and the actual love that they needed, it always releases some kind of emotion from the body. I mean, we could even do it, some people can only go back to maybe like a past marriage or something that happened last week, but nobody was there to be compassionate with them,
true. Let me
you
ask you
know.
too. If you go back
Yeah.
to the angry teenager, and I know that many people listening to the show right now probably have already connected with some thought or some feeling from their angry teenage days at this point.
Yeah.
Can you do the inner child work if you can't get past the angry teenage days? Can you still do it from that point?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So, just as like a little sample, okay? Like say, Ashley, can you remember a time when you were very angry when you were a teenager, that you were disappointed and like pissed off?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And, going to her, like you and I are walking into a room with her and saying, "Hey, we're here with you right now. Can you feel the emotion that's in her body? Can you feel it in your body?"
Mm,
Yeah.
okay.
And we just tell her, we say, "You know what? You are 100% right. You of course are angry about what's happened. It happened for a long time even before this, and your feelings are valid. Uh, you I am here for you. Anything that you want to say to me, I'm here to listen to, and it is 100% right. I love you. I have compassion for you, and I have your back, you know?" And then maybe the client will start talking about, okay, so what does she want to say to you? And maybe the angry teenager goes from being very arrogant and self righteous and angry to maybe there's some grief underneath there. Maybe she just never had her mom or her dad and they never really listened to her and no one understands her. And it's so lonely. And it's so painful.
Hmm.
And you start talking to her like, well, of course you acted out. Of course you were smoking cigarettes. Of course you were doing this and doing that. I might have done that too. I get that. And you just have a conversation with her and make it okay to just be her. And the feelings of relief and release start coming through the body. Like maybe you'll cry, maybe you won't, maybe you'll do some deep breathing with your inner child or your angry teenager and just like let the nervous system regulate and let it metabolize and come out of the body. And then all of a sudden, you have a different conversation, a different timeline, a different emotional reaction with a different thought. And like, say the original self limiting belief where my needs don't matter and I'm pissed at that. Well, we've just been there for her, and all of a sudden, her needs do matter. And we promise her that when she's angry and wants to talk to us, we'll be there because her needs matter. Now we have a different emotion paired with a different thought. The neurobiology of this is there are new neurons in our brain that are connected like this. We're feeling it in our heart, in our stomach, in our body. It's a whole different reality that we're living in now. And the more you practice this, what it does is it changes your beliefs. So now we have a different mind, different belief system. So now subconsciously, we're walking around the world with some different self limiting, self conscious beliefs, right? Now we know that our needs matter. Now we know we're lovable, that we're worthy.
Well,
That
also too, you're
creates a
right.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go for it.
Well, I'm also thinking too. When we get to the adulthood and we get into further into our adulthood, we find compassion, for our parents or what have you, guardians. And then one of the things that I see that helps with when going back to the angry teenager is that person not feeling bad for their actions because their actions were actually,
Mm-hmm.
they were right on in the situation. And I think that's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times what happens too is that people will reprogram it. Not only is it self-limiting and it gets in the way, but then it becomes this like, I feel bad about what I did. I feel ashamed about what I did, or I shouldn't have done that. And so then there's this whole other layer, of just personal anger toward oneself. Even
Mm-hmm.
and we're not even digging down into why you did it anymore. Now you're just like, man, I feel really bad. I wrecked the car. I stole, I did that back when I was 17. I was so mad about, whatever. Instead of saying, oh, well, this all rotates and reverses back to all this stuff that happened back at whatever age. And so you're right. You're able to
Yeah.
kind of reprogram that and be able to kind of change that, which is good because it not only helps give us a new timeline and a new feeling, but it also takes off some of that personal anger where we're like, I can't believe I did that, or feeling bad about something, even though there was a real reason for it, even though it might not have been the best thing to do at the time, but there was a
Yeah.
reason for doing it.
100%, 100%. And those feelings of guilt and shame are so insidious. And but that's exactly what you said. With our limited experience and the choices that we had at the time, we were doing our best. We were doing our best, and maybe like now in the future we can go back and say, well, your best was pretty bad. Okay, well, fine, but can we at least understand and have compassion and maybe a little bit of self forgiveness? You know,
Hmm.
instead of just being like these really harsh critics. You know.
Yeah, because then you had like then you have the childhood trauma, then you have the problems and experiences from then you still have the self-limiting beliefs, then you beat yourself up for the actions you had, and so
Yeah.
it's just compounding, and it's almost like sedimentary rock. You have layer upon layer upon layer. And I
Mhm.
agree with you. It's getting out, and that's kind of neat because I think a lot of people get scared, not scared, but I guess worried that the inner child work would not work because you can't get back. Some people can't get back, and I think over time you can if you actually work to it. But some people can't get back to the age of 3. They can't get back to the situation that happened. But this is neat that you can really go after that angry teenager because you're right. Anger for most people is the go-to emotion. And it's the one
Mhm.
that you remember. And I think we also hide as children and as adults. We hide when we're really feeling sad or fear. And it seems like the easiest thing to come out is that anger, is to yell or to have that road rage or to do whatever we're doing in that process, or to throw something, or instead of saying, hey, I feel really fearful or I'm really saddened. And so I think that's great that we can go back to that angry moment too and still benefit from that work as well.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's not that difficult once you can access the anger. It's not that much deeper, like you were talking about the sedimentary rock, to hit the fear and the grief. Like it's right underneath the surface there. In fact, when we become angry teenagers, it's because we're actually getting a little bit of power, right? Like we're fighting back, like we're finally taking up for ourselves. And um yeah, and so a lot of people don't remember their childhoods, but the sweet spot that I'm seeing is people start coming online about second grade, that
Hmm.
7, 8, mm, and that's kind of the end of the first stage of where you really start to get programmed. And the programming goes on and on up until 14 pretty intensely, where you're forming those neural connections. But around that 7 and 8 mark, it's almost like that sweet spot of we're unconscious, but now we're aware of what's happening. Like it's I think it's probably where our prefrontal cortex really starts firing.
Amazing. That's
So
awesome. Leah, when we return, we'll be talking more. We're going to continue our deep dive into self-limiting beliefs reprogramming, really working with your inner child, and this impacts everybody. I know that some people, don't want to, say, oh yeah, this is something that I need to do. But I think if everybody kind of looks honestly, at the growing up process and their childhood and what they went through, and what they experienced, this is just par for the course, and it's a human experience. It's not a it doesn't make you a lesser than or a less powerful person. It's just part of the growing up process, I believe. So stay tuned. We got a lot more coming up. Leah's going to continue to be on the show today, so looking forward to continuing this conversation. Stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time. Well, I'll be back this time. You know it, in 2 shakes.
Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Leah Fisher has been joining us today and discussing self-limiting beliefs and how this is a practice, and it is your brain changing. And it's interesting because when anything is of value and it takes work and time, it takes time. And it's just like anything. If something was developed, at the age of 4 and it's still impacting us, it's going to take time and work. It's like turning that big ship around, but it can be done. Leah, when you think about, this type of reprogramming process that you're working on and creating, what is the timeline on that, and how much practice does that take to really, make some significant change?
Yeah. So, after you do this a couple of times, you will start to feel relief in your body. It's almost instantaneous. It doesn't completely change the thought for a while. The research is a little varied on this, but it takes about 21 days of consistent, uh, well practice that when you're in that relaxed meditative state. So learning to get there, learning how to get your body and your mind in that state and doing the inner child work on a consistent basis. If you could do it right out of the gate, it'd take about almost a month.
Okay. Very
Yeah.
powerful. But I mean,
Yeah.
these are things that have impacted somebody their entire life.
Yeah.
So it takes
Yeah.
time, and a month is really nothing,
Yeah.
compared to 40 years.
No, absolutely. Now the trick is that our brain always wants to go back to the familiar. So actually forming the habit, doing the work, immersing yourself in it, not letting your attention get diverted. Now that's actually the difficult part right there.
Mhm.
But if you're practicing this over, you make this part of your morning meditative practice, and over a few months, you'll get the same effect. It just may not be, this quick result that you're looking at.
True. Okay. So, but you see like the sweet spot of somebody, regularly practicing this. And then how often do you work, like, let's
Mhm.
say, like with a client,
Mhm.
maybe the beginning of work? How long do you normally see? Can y'all work, like, is it maybe once a week or twice a week? Or what do you see as the real sweet spot for that as far as kind of like, you helping them walk through this properly?
Yeah. Once a week is generally fine. And I try from the very beginning to start teaching them how to do this for themselves, because I can model it for them during our session, but really I want them to be working with their inner self, their inner child and teenager and future self every single day. You know, I like it to be like a conversation that's happening in the background all the time. So
Like they're
yeah, but
checking
we
in with
we start.
themselves, right? They're checking in with
Yeah.
themselves on how they feel in the moment. Anything doesn't have to be all the way back there, but it's like, oh, I'm feeling this way. Where is this coming from? Or I'm triggered. Where is this trigger coming from? Why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling exposed? Or why am I feeling
Yes.
angry or stressed?
Yes. And instead of reacting to the life circumstance, their automatic impulse is to go inward and say, oh, there she is, that poor girl that was neglected. She's feeling lonely. Okay. I'm not going to go off on my coworker because they made me feel unseen and unheard. I'm going to shut down that reaction, go in, meet my own needs, and then I'm going to return to the table as an adult, not like a 7-year-old child. Right.
Hmm.
So, but it just takes time. But the whole time while we're working together, I'm training the person like how to integrate this into their lifestyle.
That's awesome. I want to do a show here in the next few days. You know, really talking and deep diving into the work that you're doing with using ketamine to assist the reprogramming. If that's something that you'd be willing to talk about, because I think that that's really powerful as well.
Yeah, yeah. I just started working with ketamine assisted therapy, and it's amazing. As far as speeding up the results with this kind of work, it's absolutely game changing. What it does, just in a nutshell, is as you're reprogramming your mind and your neurons are connecting and reconnecting, and you're changing the biology of your belief, the ketamine makes your brain way more plastic. So as you're doing this emotional work and reframing your thoughts and changing your beliefs, it happens like um, uh, almost instantaneously when you add the ketamine on top of it. It's pretty incredible.
Awesome. I'm so looking forward to that, and we can deep dive into that. That's going to be so much fun. Leah, it's so great to have you on the show, and it's so great to be working with you, and obviously to be
Yes.
friends as well. So I'm so glad you were able to
Yes.
come on today.
Me too. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Hey, this is awesome. This is wonderful. So stay tuned. We're going to be, obviously, talking about the ketamine here in an upcoming show and having that as well. If you have any questions or thoughts, go to the website, ashleyburgess.com, ashleyberges.com. You can also click on coaching sessions and go directly to Leah Fisher. You can set up a appointment right then online. And so that's amazing. You can either sign up for a 30, a 60, or a 90-minute session and then go from there and decide what you want to do. So, and if you have any questions for us, you can always go to the contact page, go to ashleyburgess.com, click on that contact page and send an email, and I'll get back to you, or one of us will get back to you within 48 hours. So I hope that this show has connected with you. I hope that this has also connected with maybe to be aware of any self-limiting beliefs that you may have, or maybe your friend or family member. But I think we're all dealing with this, and this is something that we practically have to go through and make our lives better. So looking forward to the next show. Stay tuned, and also don't miss, go to Spreaker, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere that you listen to podcasts. After the radio show, Live Your True Life Perspectives, and you can listen to other podcasts as well. Looking forward to connecting next week as well, and Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.